The sound of gravel crunching under unfamiliar. Tires snapped. Me out of my morning coffee haze. From the window of my lakefront ranch, I saw two black SUVs crawling toward my front gate. Slow and deliberate like predators. I wasn't expecting company. And I sure as hell wasn't on friendly terms with the HOA. My gut told me this wasn't a courtesy visit. I grabbed my boots and stepped onto the porch. Shotgun slung casually over my shoulder. Not loaded, yet. Just a statement. You don't show up unannounced on my land. Not out here. Two men stepped out of the vehicles wearing dark polos with the HOA's laughable community security logo stitched over their hearts. They strutted through the gate like they owned the place. Mr. Callahan, one of them barked, not bothering to introduce himself. We've received multiple complaints about code violations, unauthorized dock construction, excessive land modifications, and noise disturbances after sunset. We're here to assess the situation. I cross my arms. You're trespassing. And none of that applies out here. This is private property. Outside HOA jurisdiction. The second guy smirked. The HOA board recently voted to expand enforcement to buffer properties. This ranch falls within that perimeter. I felt the rage start to simmer, low and slow. You boys didn't even call ahead. Didn't get a warrant. And now you're standing here threatening me like this is your turf. The first one tried to push past me toward the dock. That's when I stepped in front of him, hard. I said, this is private land. When he shoved me, reflex kicked in. I swung low and fast, my boot connecting with his shin like a sledgehammer. A crack echoed across the field. He dropped, screaming. The second guy reached for his radio. I knocked it from his hand and swept his leg clean out from under him. He fell hard, his knee hitting a jagged patch of rock. He tried to crawl away. I didn't chase him. They came to intimidate me with authority they didn't have. But on my land, they learned the law doesn't wear a polo. It wears boots and knows how to defend itself. And that was just the beginning. The two security goons had barely dragged themselves back into their SUVs when the calls started coming in. First, it was the HOA's legal department, issuing veiled threats about assault and excessive force. I hung up. Then came the local police, asking for a statement. I told them what happened and offered the gate camera footage. They didn't seem too interested after I mentioned the HOA. Boys crossed into private land without permission. But the real storm came 2 days later. Her HOA President Karen Whitmore. 5 feet of forced smiles and iron-fisted rules wrapped in a pastel cardigan. She showed up at my front gate with 3 board members and a clipboard thick enough to be a novel. Mr. Callahan, she said sweetly, we need to speak. Immediately. I didn't even let them in. We talked through the gate. This isn't your first warning, she began, flipping pages. You've refused to comply with visual standards. You've ignored lawn upkeep regulations. And your dock project is unsanctioned. You've got no authority here. I replied, calm but firm. This ranch was zoned outside the HOA perimeter when I bought it. You don't make the rules out here, Karen. She narrowed her eyes. We just passed an amendment. Any land within 500 feet of the lake is now under limited HOA oversight. That includes you. I laughed. That amendment is garbage. You can't rewrite zoning law with a board vote. She tilted her head. We'll see about that. In the meantime, expect more visits, scheduled or not. I hope you're prepared to cooperate. Next time. I leaned forward. Last guys who came didn't leave too steady on their feet. Are you sure you want to repeat? She flinched, and the guy next to her subtly nudged her back. They left without another word, but I knew something had shifted. This wasn't just about property lines. Karen was targeting me for a reason. Later that night, my neighbor Clint came over with a 6-pack and a warning. You know that new HOA rule? Karen only pushed it because her cousin's trying to buy up all the land around the lake, cheap. You're standing in their way. So that's what this was really about. Greed. Power. Control. Well, I had news for Karen and her cousin. I wasn't going anywhere, and if they wanted a war, they just knocked on the wrong damn door. 3 nights later, just past 2 a.m., I woke up to the unmistakable sound of crunching footsteps outside my window. Not animals. Not the wind. These were slow, deliberate steps, sneakers on gravel. Someone was out there. I didn't bother flipping on the lights. I slipped into my boots, grabbed my flashlight and my old baseball bat, and stepped out onto the porch. The moon was low, casting just enough silver across the ranch for me to make out 2 figures crouched near the dock, tools in hand. Trespassers. Again, I approached silently, my boots brushing the earth like a whisper. One of them had a crowbar, the other was handling what looked like a bolt cutter. They weren't stealing. They were dismantling. That dock had taken me 3 months to build, every nail driven by hand, every plank stained under the sun. It was mine. And now, HOA rats were trying to tear it apart in the dark like cowards. Hey, I barked. They froze. I'd drop those if I were you. One of them ran. The other hesitated, made the mistake of swinging the crowbar. He was fast, but I was angry. I ducked, shoved him backwards into the dirt, and cracked the bat across his shin. He screamed, sharp, panicked. Same leg, same result. Must be an HOA trend. The other guy scrambled into a getaway car parked near the road. I caught the plate. A rental. I tied the guy who stayed behind with a spare rope and called the sheriff. When the deputy showed up, he looked annoyed but not surprised. Another one? He muttered. Karen must really want you out. I gave him the footage from my security cams. He took the injured guy into custody and promised to file trespassing charges. But I could tell even he was tired of playing referee in this war. The next day, a cease and desist letter arrived, personally, signed by Karen. It threatened legal action for assault, obstruction, and intimidation. I laughed and added it to my growing pile of HOA junk mail. But something in her tone had changed. This wasn't just HOA procedure anymore. Karen was unraveling. My resistance was embarrassing her, and worse, it was inspiring others. Clint told me more ranch owners had started ignoring HOA notices, citing my case. Karen's grip on the neighborhood was slipping, and she knew it. She was cornered now. And a cornered Karen? That's the most dangerous kind. 2 days after the failed midnight sabotage, I received a registered letter, marked Final HOA Action. I didn't even need to open it to know what it said. Karen was doubling down, but I underestimated just how far she'd go. That evening, Clint radioed me from his truck. You better get to the dock now? Karen brought everyone. I bolted out the door and ran down the path through the trees, heart pounding with rage and disbelief. As I broke through the clearing, my breath caught. 4 SUVs were parked across my lower property line. A dozen people stood by the dock, board members, hired muscle, and Karen herself, arms crossed like she was the queen of condos. She stepped forward, megaphone in hand. By authority granted by the Lakeview HOA and its emergency enforcement bylaws, she shouted, "This dock is now subject to immediate demolition. Step aside or face legal consequences." I walked calmly to the edge of the dock and stood right on it, arms folded. You step 1 foot on this dock, and I swear, legal will be the least of your concerns. Karen gave a smug nod to one of the guys flanking her. A large man, clearly hired muscle, stepped forward with a wrench. He got 2 steps in. I pulled a lever hidden beneath the boathouse roof. Crack. The dock lit up, floodlights flaring across the water. A siren blared from the tree line. Cameras mounted along the trees powered on, blinking red. I'd spent the last week preparing for this, and I wasn't about to let Karen tear down my work. You're all on camera, I said loud enough for the whole crowd. You've crossed onto private property. You've ignored cease and desist orders. You've attempted property damage, assault, and now you're staging a hostile action. Keep going. I dare you. There was silence. The big guy hesitated, glanced back at Karen. She clenched her jaw but said nothing. Then the best thing that could have happened happened. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up, lights flashing, and Deputy Monroe stepped out. Evening, he called. Got a report of unauthorized entry onto private property. Again, Karen stormed toward him, pointing at me. He's obstructing HOA enforcement. He's threatening us. Monroe calmly raised a hand. I've seen the footage. I've seen the land deed. This property's outside your jurisdiction. If you don't leave now, I'll be pressing charges on behalf of him. Karen's face turned white. The board members scattered like dry leaves. Monroe turned to me with a half smile. You've got patience. More than I would. I nodded. Not patience, just principle. As the last SUV pulled away, I turned back toward the lake. The water was still, peaceful again. The HOA had sent security. They sent threats. They even sent a mob. But they all left the same way, defeated, humiliated, and in some cases, crawling. And I just kept standing. If you enjoyed watching an HOA finally get put in its place by a man who knows how to defend his land, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got more real, raw stories where justice hits back harder. And don't forget to like the video if you think Frank did the right thing. And comment below, what would you have done if security stormed onto your land uninvited?